Hello there, crafty doer. Jessica Michaels here with the weekly project post. For this week's project, I created a card, dived into my stash of DIY backgrounds using up leftover product, and I get into many mixed media techniques, so keep watching to learn more about those. But before we get into it, don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more content like this and hit the notification bell so you don't miss more content like this. Here's how I went. I select this background because I have been purposely working on it compared to the other ones you saw there in my basket. These are stencils that I did a little reverse stenciling or stencil smooshing, some people call it. I use these stencils on various projects, and there was ink left over on it from, ink blending on my project with my ink blending brush. And instead of washing it off or wiping it off, I left the ink on there, and then I use a little bit of water to spritz on there, and then I'm going to just smoosh it down on my paper. So you see me actually get an ink pad and wipe some ink on there. You can totally do this as an intentional technique, I just kind of wanted to show you what the results are, how I got this background in the first place. But this is just a plain copier paper that I keep in arm's reach, so that when I end up with some ink on stencils like this, I have it there to pick up with my copier paper, as opposed to my rag here that you see. Put it under my heat press machine to just straighten it out a little bit, get the crinkles and wrinkles out of there as much as I can, because I continue to pick up wet product, then it continues to wrinkle up. And it's not until now that I am being purposeful with it that I prefer it to be as straight as possible. So what I'm going to do now is start building layers, and I like to do that in clusters when I'm working on a background. I've never crafted like this before, saving, product and just creating backgrounds on its own without having a project in mind. So this is very new to me. I guess it's kind of like using your scraps. So, you're going on an adventure with me. So I use some stencil butter in one of my favorite colors, green, or it's like the favorite color. This card I'm creating is for a graduation card, and the recipient is super into green right now. So I thought that I could start bringing out more of that onto this background. One of the cool things about creating your own background, I found, is that you can just feel free to create. There's, like I mentioned earlier, there's not a project in mind. At least when this background first started, I didn't have this card in mind. Once I decided that this is what my end game was going to be, then I started being a little bit more intentional. But that is one of the cool things. As I was saying, you can just sit and freely just create. Here I'm using some texture paste in opaque. I really love this paste because wet or dry, it will soak up any other colored product that you apply to it. So I thought that was really fun. At the end result here, you'll be able to see all the different colored products that it ends up picking up. It's a little bit see-through. It might just be because I'm not applying it as heavy. And then in the lighter, where I apply lighter, it's a little see-through. And then I do end up applying a little bit heavier in different areas. And that's not as see-through. So I continue to build layers and build clusters. And I end up grabbing one of Tim Holtz floral cling stamps. And I'm going to do a little bit of what I call wet stamping. And it's just where you add some ink onto your stamp and spritz it with water. I end up pressing it down a little bit longer and harder than I would usually do with without diluting the ink on the stamp because I want the paper to soak up all the wet ink on the back of my stamp. So I do that a few times. I kind of wish I would have went with a bolder bright or a bolder pink, but it's just another layer, another element to add to the depth of this background. So I think you have to keep in mind, not I think, you do have to keep in mind what type of paper you're creating on. Again, I'm creating on just regular copy paper because I wasn't really sure where I was going with this idea. I just hope that it would have sparked something. And a lot of the backgrounds do, some of them don't. This one, again, I was just kind of keeping close to my heart. I was cradling this one, so I was being careful on what I was picking up with this paper. So next, I'm going to grab one of the stencils that I used for this smoosh stenciling or reverse stenciling because I wanted to bring it back. I love this stencil. It's from Sweet and Sassy Stamps. You get that like iconic classic stencil font, but also she gives you a lot of different options to stencil. So I get to use the word joy, some numbers up there, and some scripture, which is really cool. One of the main reasons why I like to shop at Sweet and Sassy Stamps. I think they're doing a rebrand. I've mentioned this before. They're now Creative Worship stamps or just Creative Worship. So go check them out if you haven't heard about her. So you see that I have some leftover product on my stencil. I'm going to go ahead and just spritz that and then reverse stencil right on top of my background that I've been working on. And you can get a real live look at what that looks like in the middle of a project. It only takes a few seconds. Well, I wouldn't say a few seconds, but a few more steps. And, you get this beautiful background that you can do endless things with. Today, we're going to create a card with it. So to bring more of that green back, I dilute some Distress Oxide on my glass working surface, and I do a little bit of splattering on top of the clusters that I've created. I opt for one of the Distress watercolor pencils because I wanted a brighter pink and I also wanted a different texture element. If you haven't played with these, I love them. They definitely add texture to it. When it dries, especially, you can see the difference between the splatters of Distress Oxide and the watercolor pencil. Also, when you let it sit there and letting it dry, it gets a little muddy is the only way I can describe it appropriately. And so when I go in and outline these triangles from the reverse stenciling, you can really truly see the texture and just like the muddy texture behind it. I absolutely love it. So now I'm going to try and bring the yellow through that you kind of see in the background. I use a really pretty honeybee petal stencil to do reverse stenciling on my background on a different project, and I wanted to pull that through. So I just opt for a script stamp and use this fossilized amber yellow up here. And what I like to do when I stamp for backgrounds, especially creating little clusters like this, is I like to lightly stamp. I used one finger, sometimes two, but it's just kind of like a little dab. That way you're not getting the full stamp, kind of like I did on the top right-hand corner. I wasn't happy with that area, but nothing a little mixed media can't help. And so I don't just randomly stamp. My creative thought process is I add the yellow where there's already yellow coming through. So because this Distress Oxide color is a little heavier than the yellow that was reverse stenciled, it adds to the layers. So I do the same choosing this like spot stamp. This is Stamperia. All the products will be listed in the description box below as usual, if you're interested or curious. But next, I go ahead and heat set this. It doesn't need to be, I'm just completely, I like to go when I do my mixed media, unless I absolutely use like heavy stencil butter or something that needs to, dry for an hour or so. But I usually use my heat gun to help the drying process. So once I do that, I want to add a little bit more green. Again, the recipient is really into green right now, and I wanted to kind of just make that not the show, but because this piece is just the show in itself, I believe. But just want to bring more of that green through, and I add a little bit of stenciling with the polka dots. I do a little more splattering with one of the watercolor pencils, and just try to keep it contained to where that blue stamp is. And then finally, for some shimmer and a little bit of fun sparkle, I add some mica spray. I spritz it, but I also like do a drip spray. You can see right here. So just, another cool way to use your sprays. So finally, I'm happy with the wood I've created with the layering and the clusters and this entire background. So I'm going to use some Distress Glaze to do two things. One, to completely seal my background. That way, whatever else I decide to add next won't have any effect on it. So it'll stay exactly as it is. And my plan is to add some white gloss splatters, and I want those to stay true clean and white. The second thing Distress Gloss Spray does is that it really does help intensify the colors on your background, and it just makes them more vibrant. Especially when you use Distress Oxide, which is the what I use the most. Distress Oxide dries chalky and like a matte finish. So the Distress Glaze really helps make it a little bit glossier. So then I had an idea, and I left this in there. I was going to cut it out, but I want to, learn from my mistakes. I thought, how cool would it be to spray a stencil? Because if you're not familiar with Dina Wakley's gloss sprays, it has a little ball. It's like, to me, it's like a non-aerosol like spray paint. And so that's what I thought, especially using like the old school Sweet and Sassy stamp or stencil. I wanted to kind of recreate, some of that. And so that's what I tried to do. I tried to spray some gloss spray through the stencil, and it didn't come through because there was so much texture on my paper that the stencil couldn't lay completely flat. I wasn't too ecstatic that it didn't work, but I was happy because it added a little bit more white, and it toned down a lot of that green and mica that I had originally or previously sprayed. So now I get to choose what part of my background I want to use for my card. And that's just another really cool thing about creating your own backgrounds is, you don't have to love the entire thing if you do frame it that way. But it's really cool because you get to, select what portion of your background you want to use. And I learned that it seemed like a lot to me until I trimmed it down. And then you can just really hone in on everything that you just created, and it pops out more because now you're just looking at this like smaller portion of your background as opposed to the whole thing. I thought it was a really cool revelation to me, but I go ahead and trim it down. And I have the rest of it to do, whatever else I want. I may create a couple more cards. You may see it pop up in my future projects. I will keep you posted and link you right back here to this video. So remember that I am using regular, just plain copier paper. I decided that it was a little too flimsy and I wanted the feel of the quality of cardstock. So what I do is I adhere it to some white cardstock. And I'm so happy that I did because it did two things. It gave me that quality feel, and also it helped me smooth down whatever wrinkles and little ridges were left on this background. So that was a really cool thing if you do end up just getting copier paper. I do it because I don't know what I'm going to do next with it. As I mentioned, it's my first time kind of crafting this way. I know some people use like collage paper, but I don't know how that would pick up all of my, liquid product. So if you know me by now, I love running my paper through stitching. I'm a sucker for it. And that's what I end up doing, a little stitch around, a stitched border and a zigzag. This cut file for the sentiment of my card, you can get for free on my website. As long as you sign up for my monthly newsletter, you can get this cut file, a whole bunch of other cut files, again, for free, straight to your inbox. And I usually add a little extra just to show you my appreciation of signing up for my newsletter. So if you haven't done so already, go check that out. So I'm going to add a little height to the sentiment with foam tape. I also did create the offset because I supply the cut file, just the congrats grad with the little cap. But then in Cricut Design Space, you have an option to create offsets. I think you can do that with any other design program as well, but that's what I end up doing here. I also decided that I really want to matte my background with some black, and I'm happy I did that because it helps bring in all of the black stitching, the black sentiment, and also the black splattering that I did when I diluted the black stencil butter. So this is how it is looking so far. I grabbed some sequin from my stash and I just end up adding little clusters on top of their respected colors. So pink where the pink is, blue where the blue is, so on and so forth. And then off camera, I end up hole punching the excess of this glitter. Congrats grad. I decided it wasn't sparkly enough. It wasn't like, there wasn't enough calibration going on. It was a little too matte and boring. So I recut it and then I just glue it right on top of there. I liked it because I didn't mind it because it added more just dimension and it popped it off a little bit more. But again, off camera, I end up hole punching some little dots that you'll see here at the end of the video. But this is what it ends up looking. Who would have thunk? I didn't even know what I was going to create, to be honest with you. And on the inside, as I finish all of my cards, I use Emily Moore's die cut liner with black, and then I just add a little bit of white for my writing. A lot of the techniques that I used in this project are a part of a mixed media prompt I'm offering for free, along with that congrats cut file if you're interested. Again, all you have to do is sign up for my newsletter at jessicamichaelscreativedesigns.com. Hey, thanks so much for watching. I look forward to seeing your creations with my free mixed media prompt, the summer edition. Remember, you create because you were fearfully and wonderfully created. Don't forget, you belong, even if paper crafting isn't your thing.